My name is Jos Huber. I'm working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Directorate for Sustainable Economic Development. I'm responsible for promoting labor rights in global supply chains. The role of the government in promoting living wage has several elements. The first element is setting the agenda at international fora. Another element is funding programs of development partners to organize activities, develop policies, and implement them. There's another role of the government in promoting agreements, responsible business conduct agreements, and taking up ambitious targets and commitments on living wage. We also need to secure the theme of living wage in legislation and other government policies. A core problem is the lack of minimum wages on the level of a living wage. Therefore, we need a more active role of local governments to initiate higher minimum wages. For this reason, Dutch government used its influence to involve the ILO and to fund an ILO project for a methodology for calculating costs of living as a proxy for benchmarks living wage. By now, there are quite some learnings, fortunately, for realizing living wages. An important learning is the importance of the living wage benchmarks. Everybody, all parties, need to know the long-term ambition. Adequate minimum wage setting is the royal way to living wages. Therefore, the role of the ILO is important. But as long as the minimum wages do not meet the living wage benchmark, there will be a responsibility for global supply chains to bridge the gap towards living wages. Talking about prices will have to be part of any living wage strategy. Market forces keep driving down prices. So to realize living wages, global supply chains need to enable producers with their pricing to pay living wages. Social dialogue needs to be part of a living wage strategy. Workers and employers need to be able to negotiate on wages. But also the sourcing dialogue needs to be part of it. The social dialogue and the sourcing dialogue need to be combined. Combining these structures for social dialogue and the sourcing dialogue are not in place yet. Governments will need to step in to enable those structures. Collaboration of all parties in the supply chain is important. But there is a risk that parties wait for each other and that we will not make progress in time. So we need pilots, practical projects, to scale them up and to show that progress is possible. Fortunately, we start having results in our journey. An important result is the anchor methodology with the benchmarks, the Global Living Wage Coalition that's in place and keeps building on new benchmarks. Dutch government has evaluated its policy for responsible business conduct. The conclusion was that the voluntary approach is not sufficient. So more regulation is needed, and this has been expressed in a recent letter to Parliament. Dutch government prefers this regulation to be on an EU level. To realize living wages will take time, but we have a 2030 horizon for our agenda linked to the SDG agenda. But we will need in-between ambitions else everybody will lean back because 2030, it's 10 years from now. So in-between ambitions are necessary to formulate. Governments at both sides of global supply chains will come forward to play a more prominent role, is my expectation, to prevent negative effects of globalization and to promote living wages and living incomes. Ideally, these higher prices will lead to living wages, and that's what it's all about.